So, to introduce ourselves, my name is Laura Ham. I'm the co-owner of Traverse Journeys with my business partner, Ashley Blake, there in the photo. And as I mentioned, I live in Austin, Texas. I'm currently doing a little bit of a road trip in the US, staying with some friends. And so I'm in Colorado at the moment in seated outside at a cafe. So if you hear any traffic noises or anything like that in the background, that's why. And yeah, I'm excited to host this event. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Alexandra Schmidt. I am originally from Minnesota and relocated to Croatia. I live in Dubrovnik with my Croatian partner. I actually have Croatian roots via my grandfather. So I live there now full time. I am a travel blogger and Croatia travel planner, and I am the local host for Traverse's Croatia tour.
Excellent. Yeah, we're excited that we could get Alex to join us for this event. She's our Croatia expert for sure. Excellent. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Traverse Journeys as you're the folks behind today's event and our other events. So Traverse Journeys is a small group tour company. We create itineraries to over 25 countries with small groups, usually about 6 to 12 people. We focus on transformative travel. So we look for, travel experiences and places and destinations, and cultural immersion and cross-cultural experiences that really can impact the traveler as well as the community in positive ways. And we have our little tagline, which is People, Planet, and Purpose, which means for us, with the people aspect, that we focus on people-to-people experiences when we travel. We use local guides like Alex, who's normally living in Croatia, and engaging with the culture. We go to destinations where tourism opportunities are desired and where we can find impactful ways to engage with and learn about local communities and issues and culture. And the next, the planet piece, we visit obviously beautiful places on Earth, which there are many of. Always keeping in mind the mission to do no harm and to leave each place hopefully a little better than we found it. We stay in our accommodation partners, we vet to make sure that they demonstrate eco-friendly practices. Our meals are local and organic food as much as possible. And, with all of our partners, we just look for ways that we can support conservation and sustainable agriculture and just make sure that the destination's beauty remains that way. And with our purpose, part of our motto, one of the biggest pieces of that is that we partner with a local NGO in each country that we travel to, and we donate a portion of the sales for that trip to the local NGO. And we also create like a half-day experience where the guests on our trip will meet with and interact with the people from the organization and do some kind of activity that engages them with the mission. So yeah, I think that kind of sums up a little bit about Traverse. Be sure to stick around because we do have some discounts that we have on some of our trips coming up, and more ways that you can stay engaged with us. And yeah, I'm happy to have you here. And without further ado, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Alex to begin Croatia.
I'm seeing the screen is still stuck on the Croatia portion of it. Is it?
What do you mean, the Croatia?
It just says Croatia presented by Traverse. I'm not seeing the slide.
Is everybody else seeing that? And can anybody pipe in the chat to tell me if they're seeing the slides change? They are on my screen, so I'm not sure why they wouldn't be elsewhere.
No slide changes.
They haven't changed on my end.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not sure what's going on here. Let me see if I can fix that.
Now I see it, yeah.
Okay. And sorry, a little technical difficulty. Do you see that slide switching back and forth? No? No?
I see it now, so.
Okay.
Thanks,
Excellent.
Laura.
No worries.
Awesome. All right, so let's start with where Croatia is. So Croatia is in Europe, considered in southeastern Europe. As you can see, the northern part borders Slovenia, a little bit of Italy, Hungary, and then it goes down the coast and it borders the other Balkan countries. Croatia has a population of about 4 million. Hold on here. Sorry, now how do I get it to not be full screen?
Sorry about the technical difficulties here, guys.
Okay. Sorry, it keeps going full screen and then I can't see my notes. So as you can see along the coast, it's on the Adriatic Sea. That is the Dalmatian coast from Zadar down to Dubrovnik, which is that southernmost point, a little bit next to Bosnia and Herzegovina and Montenegro. Technically, Croatia is considered a Mediterranean climate along the coast, although in the northern regions in around Zagreb, that's a little bit more temperate. You'll actually get snow there in the winter. So yeah, Croatia has a very long geographic position, so you get a lot of different types of climates and environments, and then also a lot of different influences throughout history. Want to jump to the history slide there?
I did. Is it still not changing?
Mm-mm.
Ugh, this has not happened before.
Well, anyways, I can talk a little bit about history.
Okay, yeah, go ahead while I try and troubleshoot this.
So Croatia has existed as a territory for a very long time, but it actually has only existed as a country for about 30 years. So throughout history, there's been a lot of regional influences, starting first with the Romans from 11 BC to the 5th century AD along the Dalmatian coast. The Venetian Empire also ruled parts of Croatia. Yeah, here we are. Thanks, Laura. From the 14th through the end of the 17th century, you had the Austrian and Hungarian Empire ruling parts of northern Croatia, Zagreb to be exact. You see a lot of Austro-Hungarian architecture in that area. And that was through the 15th to the 18th century. You also had the Ottomans in the 16th and the 17th. And then Dubrovnik, some of you may know from Game of Thrones, and also it's one of the most popular tourist hubs, was a republic known as Republic of Ragusa for about 500 years. And also Croatia was part of the former Yugoslavia, which is most notably known. It was a basically federated communist state. It was originally formed at the end of World War I. And then after World War II, it became under Tito's rule. It was a communist nation. And then the breakup of Yugoslavia in the early 1990s is what allowed Croatia to secede and become independent. So since then, Croatia has been independent, and there's still a lot of influences from all of these various territories that have ruled over Croatia. There's a lot of Italian influences, other Balkan influences as well. A lot of people ask, what language do people speak in Croatia? They speak Croatian, and they are known as Croat or Croatian people, you can say. Croatian, the language sounds a lot like, I explain it to people, like Russian with a little bit of like an Italian accent. There's a lot of different regional dialects as well. So it's interesting, you can hear when you go from the north at the capital in Zagreb along the coast, you can hear different dialects and different words used. And even when I speak with my American accent in some parts of Croatia, they don't understand me as well as they do in let's say Dubrovnik, where I live. So Okay, we can jump to the COVID situation in Croatia. Awesome. Thanks, Laura. So actually, Croatia has done really well responding to COVID-19. And basically, right when we got wind that this was spreading across Europe at the beginning of March, they took immediate action. So Croatia's population, I mentioned previously, is 4 million, and they rolled out a lot of testing. As of today, there's overall been 2,250 cases, so that's not too bad if you compare it to a lot of places in the US. There's been about 100 deaths, and it's mainly been among the elderly population. And, you know, they actually have one of the lowest mortality rates in Europe. One thing that I think is interesting that ties into their history with communism, and also they're a collective culture. So they were very proactive at the beginning about shutting down and actually being quite strict. Basically, you couldn't move out of your county, and you had to kind of stay within, you know, the Dubrovnik county, the Split county. You basically couldn't leave your city. So they were able to kind of get that under control, and they've already started opening up borders. It's completely free for 10 other countries in Europe that are mainly Eastern Europe. They're starting to open up borders for the rest of Europe now, and currently it's a little bit confusing, but they actually do allow non-EU citizens, including the US, to come in if you have a hotel reservation or a pressing personal matter. There's a bunch of essentially a form that you fill out online, and you have to have approval, but there are cases of US citizens, UK citizens as well, that have come and been able to get in. But the situation is unfolding. There's supposed to be a bigger announcement in terms of EU borders set for next week. But we're pretty hopeful that Croatia is definitely one of the safest places to be now, and will continue to be. They've been really good about responding to the situation.
Yeah, that's really good news. Definitely, it's nice to hear when it goes well in other countries. I think we answered Marco's question about the border crossing restrictions concerning the neighboring countries. Did you touch on that, Alex?
So in terms of like going to Bosnia and Herzegovina and Montenegro?
Yeah, like by car, by road, or, you know, like the land borders.
So that's a little bit complicated, and to be honest, I know that it changed in the past few days, so I don't want to say anything in solid. It definitely is a little bit more challenging to take, let's say, a day trip to Bosnia and Herzegovina than it used to be, but you can transit through, because there is, if you look at that map of Croatia, there's a little part in the Dalmatian coast where you have to go through the border in Bosnia. So you're allowed to transit through no problem, but there are a little bit, some regulations depending on what country you're coming from and how long you've been in Bosnia. There's some isolation, stuff like that. But if you were to come to Croatia and just transit through Bosnia to get to Dubrovnik, for example, there's no issue there. So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you know, before anybody asks, you know, I think that there's a very high likely chance that, you know, when the EU and Croatia begin to open up more, that at first the US will probably be excluded from that because of what we've got going on here. That seems to be the rumor anyway. And so, you know, in terms of traveling to Croatia, you know, we definitely expect that the next couple months are still going to be, you know, not very viable, but we're hoping, fingers crossed, that by October and beyond, that there may be the possibility to go to Croatia. And so, you know, we have dates, for example, for our Croatia trip in October, and you know, anybody who's get itchy feet and really wants to get out, you know, feel free to take, you know, to try that October dates, and you know, if there are any reason that we need to postpone, or if it's still not viable, as the next few months unfold, we'll just postpone the trip with all the payments till 2021. So, yeah. All right.
All right.
continuing on.
All right, so we'll take a look at our trip here. This is actually a photo of Dubrovnik from the Dubrovnik city walls, former Republic of Ragusa I was referring to. So we're just going to go through the itinerary that myself, along with Traverse, has formed for our Croatia tour. This is an itinerary that kind of encompasses all of the highlights of Croatia is really what we wanted to do here. So you can feel free to kind of use this as inspiration, and we'd love to have you along as Laura mentioned, but we just kind of want to highlight in general all of the great parts about Croatia that we've tried to encompass as well. All right, so we start our itinerary in Zagreb, and Zagreb is the capital city of Croatia. As you can see, that's the northern point there. And so we are there for, let's see, 2 nights. And that's really cool because you can kind of get the experience of the Austro-Hungarian architecture. We have a cool history walking tour. If any of you have been to Eastern Europe, it's kind of like a eclectic avant-garde Vienna. I don't know if you would agree, Laura. So from there, we then go to Plitvice Lakes. And if you've ever seen the pictures of these breathtaking waterfalls with like turquoise waters, that's where we go. And it's a really fun way to basically, it's kind of like I wouldn't really say it's a hike. It's like a nice brisk walk. And it's, one of Croatia's famous national parks. And then after being there for the afternoon, we are in Zadar. Zadar has a lot of Roman history, so it's really cool to see all of the churches and the Roman monuments. And then from there, we drive down to Split. And Split, you can see also more Roman history. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, there's lots of filming sites there. Diocletian's Palace is a big landmark there. And then we make our way down to Dubrovnik, and before getting there, we stop in Ston. And Ston was also previously a part of the Republic of Ragusa, the Dubrovnik Republic. So there's a lot of interesting, it's actually the greatest, the longest fortress wall in Europe. And actually second to only the Great Wall of China. So there's this massive wall that you can walk. And then there's also places that you can stop for oysters. It's a little bay there that's good for lots of seafood, stuff like that. And then we end in Dubrovnik with some free time. And then we have a group farewell dinner at the end. So we kind of encompass all of that. And all right, so the experience, we basically really want to keep in mind having authentic experience of Croatia, incorporating as much of the local culture as possible. Croatia does have a problem, well, we'll see now with COVID, but with over-tourism. So one thing that we tried to make our itinerary stand out is by incorporating locally owned boutique B&Bs, incorporating the historical context of not just Yugoslavia, but again, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Roman Empire, and all of these things, even if they were, 200-300 years ago, have a lot of historical influence now. And then also all of the nature that Croatia has, from the waterfalls of the north to the beaches along the coast. Seasonal cuisine is something we incorporate into the meals that we have, the different wines throughout Croatia, and then also giving back through ocean conservation with our community partner Greensail. We have a day with them. And then the groups we have is usually 8 to 12 that we've had in years past, so.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add too, in general, for anyone traveling post-COVID, just that it's important to think about, where your money's going, because there's so many small businesses that have just been so hurt and impacted, obviously, by what's going on. So when we travel, we really try to make sure that the money we spend, you know, stays in the hands of the locals and the families and people in the country as much as possible.
Absolutely. You guys have done a really
now
good,
more than ever.
right. You guys have done a really good job with that. And yeah, it's definitely, Croatia has obviously been hit pretty hard with COVID, and people are really anxious for this to get back to normal. And that's kind of part of the reason why they were so strict initially. So I think this will be a good reminder, yeah, to support the locals, which is something. All right, so let's just look at some of our accommodation here. So this is our accommodation in Zagreb. It's a little bit outside of the main city center. Zagreb is, you know, the city is beautiful, but also there's really beautiful lush green parks and forests around there. So this is a nice place that we get to experience that, as well as kind of the city break. And the staff there are super nice. This is Zadar. This is their breakfast room. The breakfast room is a favorite of some of our past clients, and yeah, it's right in the city there. This is Split. This is, I believe, the solo travelers room. And then this is the double, for those that choose double occupancy.
Yep, absolutely. There we go.
Okay. So yeah, we'll go a little bit through more about Zagreb. So Zagreb, there's a lot of different sites to see. One of them is the Dolak market. It's this massive market that has anything from fresh produce, like all the farmers from around that region come in to sell their stuff. And then there's also some souvenirs. You have yeah, there's a lot of tunnels that were from World War II. When we go on our historical walking tour, they explain a bit about that. I will butcher this still, even though I say it all the time, but the Jelic Square, that's kind of one of the main areas where there's, you can actually see that there where there's a statue. And then if you can look at the buildings and stuff on the left, that's kind of that like pastel Austro-Hungarian architecture that's really cool in Zagreb. You have St. Mark's Church. It has a big emblem that's basically Croatia's national flag. There's a Homeland War Museum, and what's really cool is there's this museum called the Museum of Broken Relationships, and it has nothing to do with Croatian history, but it just has a bunch of different artifacts from unsuccessful relationships, and just kind of symbols of their breakup story, but it's really interesting. And here's some pictures of the tunnels in Zagreb. Yeah, that's one of the World War II tunnels. And also in the winter in Zagreb, they have actually it won a couple years in a row the best winter market, winter Advent festival, whatever you want to call it. And they decorate this. And each year they have a different theme. So last year was Nutcracker, and it was pretty cool. And that's the square that I mentioned previously. Yeah, and that's one of the churches there. That's the Zagreb Cathedral, and just kind of some pretty Austro-Hungarian influences. Yep, and this is Plitvice Lakes. As you can see, it's not really much of a hike. It's kind of, you know, walking up and down steps that kind of weave through the lakes and all that. Highly recommended. Yeah, and there you can see that bright blue water and just all of the lush colors. Yeah, so this is Zadar here. This is the first country along the Dalmatian coast. There's both Roman and Venetian history here. There's so many Roman churches. There's Roman ruins as well. And then there's also something called the sea organs, which is basically when the waves come into this little panel type thing, it creates kind of this ominous sea organ sound. So it's the first of its kind ever, and a lot of people come to Zadar just to see that. This is Split. This is within the old town of Split. There's a lot of Roman history here as well. That view on the right, that is from the bell tower overlooking Split. Obviously, you can see it's on the coast as well. Split is also the second biggest city in Croatia, for anyone wondering, and that's where Diocletian's palace is. That was also a big Game of Thrones filming site, but more importantly, it has a lot of interesting Roman history as well. And this is Split as well. Actually, the one on the left is in Dubrovnik, but it looks similar to Split. Yeah, that was on our walking tour with our community partner. I was talking about ocean preservation and also the preservation of these historic sites in Split. Yeah, so this is our community partner, Greensail. I've actually gotten to know them quite well, and they're so cool. Croatia is doing a lot of things to try to preserve their coast, obviously, not just for tourism reasons, but because that's a lot of people's livelihoods, fishing and you know, living off of the land. So last year we had a community beach cleanup, and we sorted all the different types of plastic and things that we found. And it's both a educational and community volunteer event. And then also it's nice because you get to hang out at the beach and meet with locals, and a really cool way to kind of give back and also interact with the with community that's working in ocean preservation.
Yeah, and just to add too, I mean, because the reason that we chose ocean preservation for Croatia, do you want to talk a little bit about like the coast of Croatia and the cruise industry and all that?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, the Adriatic is actually one of the cleanest seas in the world. However, there is issues with pollution, and a lot of them do relate to over-tourism. Cruises are a huge problem. There are also ships that come from, say, Albania or other parts of Europe where, I mean, it's illegal, they're not supposed to, but they do dump some of their trash. And just the way that the flow of the Adriatic goes, sometimes there's trash from other parts of the Mediterranean that kind of gets sucked up into the Adriatic there. So we chose ocean preservation because that's one thing that with Croatia, you know, they continue to struggle with. And it's really these nonprofits that are doing most of the work. That's definitely something the Croatian government could work on a bit more. But it is really cool to see that there's locals, and Greensail has done this a lot as well, both in partnering with sailing communities in the private sector, and then also organizing scuba diving groups and stuff, and they're going out and picking out some of the trash and all of that, and they do a lot of educational work in schools and stuff. So this is Ston. This is one of the stops on the way to Dubrovnik, and as you can see there up in the corner, those walls, that's a portion of the walls of Ston. It's one of the most breathtaking views when you can get up there, and when we have our stop over there, and just in general when you're driving down the coast, you have to stop in Ston, if not to stay. That is part of a peninsula called the Pelishats Peninsula. But for those that are wanting to just sit and relax, Ston is known for the Bay of Molystone that has tons of great oysters, and that whole Pelishats region has a ton of great wine. So, I mean, you could really spend all day there just walking around, taking in the beauty, sipping wine, all that. So.
Yeah, I love that little seaside place that we stopped at for the oysters, with just this like little grandma like in this kind of shack by the sea, like
Right.
serving up delicious fresh oysters.
I remember someone was trying to go into the bathroom, and she was like, "Oh yeah, the bathroom's in my house. Just go right in." Like, just typical, yeah, Croatian grandma, like checking the oysters open and.
Yeah, and that's all they served pretty much, right? It was just oysters.
Oysters and wine. So
yes, of course.
all you need in life.
Amen.
And so this is Dubrovnik. As I said, this is from the walls of Dubrovnik. That's basically the peninsula that you walk around. That's a must when you go to Dubrovnik. And it's also one thing that we encourage our clients to do when they have free time. As I mentioned previously, Dubrovnik is a former independent republic, and it was called the Republic of Ragusa. The Stari Grad, which is called, translates to the Old Town. So this is of Dubrovnik's Old Town. And then there's also something called Mount Surge, which basically is up on a hill perched over the Old Town. There's a cable car that goes up there. There's also a hike, and then there's a restaurant, as well as a war museum, because Dubrovnik was hit pretty hard during the breakup of Yugoslavia. So Dubrovnik has a ton of not just history of the former republic, but also the breakup of Yugoslavia. So there's a lot to take in there, yeah. Here's some pretty pictures of the Old Town. Even though I've lived there on and off for 5 years, I always find a new street and someone hanging their laundry. So one of the, or the add-on that is an option for this trip is to Montenegro. And basically this is not run by me, but this is run by a local Montenegrin. Her name's Ivana. So the add-on basically includes driving across the border to Montenegro, and getting to the border in Montenegro, Croatia to Montenegro is 20 minutes from Dubrovnik. As you can see, like right down there, it's just across the border there. So that includes driving across the border to Zagreb, where there's a picnic and hike. And then Durmitor National Park is incredible. It's basically like the Alberta National Park of the Balkans. It's so underrated, and there's so many beautiful hikes there. They did a really good job of picking all of the best places to see within this area. And yeah, so this is that previous picture was of Black Lake, and it's the biggest glacier lake in Montenegro. Thanks, Laura. Here's a couple of pictures of the hike. Yeah, they stay in mountain cabins, and there's a fresh farm-to-table dinner, as you can see there. Yeah, so those are the mountain cabins in Zablak, and that town is super cute. And then this is kayaking on Lake Skadar. Skadarsko is the full name that I still struggle with some of the words, guys. So, and that's actually one of the biggest lakes in the Balkans. And you can see there's a fortress, there's fish picnics, and it's just a really authentic like Balkan experience to have, and it's super beautiful. So they spend the night there in the charming village of Kotor, and then they visit the towns Perest and Budva. These are also really beautiful towns and unpopular day trips. So for those of you that were interested in getting a more encompassed view of the Balkans, Montenegro is definitely a good option. Also on the Adriatic, obviously. I love Kotor and Budva for the Lady of the Rocks. They have a cute little old town that looks very similar to the other Dalmatian towns. Just as a side note, they speak Montenegrin, but it's basically the same exact language as Croatia. Yeah, and there's Lady of the Rocks is what this is a hike that's basically up to the top overlooking Kotor, and it's incredible. It's one of my favorite hikes in the entire region. So we can talk a little bit about the food in Croatia. It definitely varies regionally. In the northern parts of Croatia, on the bottom there, that's what's called cevapi. It's like a skinless sausage that combines pork, beef, sometimes lamb. Arnica is on the left there, which is a candy you can buy in the store, but like every Croatian grandmother and mom makes them. So usually a lot of the hotels will have that in like the lobby, and it's a candied orange peel. They're very big on the wine and the brandies in Croatia. So you can see on the right-hand side there, those are different types of rakia. There are different flavors. There's some that are just straight, taste like almost gasoline or something, but people swear by the medicinal properties. And then there are some that are a little sweeter, that are honey, Medica. I know Laura tried that last time. Yep, and then also along the coast you have the fresh fish with vegetables, also a lot of fresh fruits. A lot of people still live off the land and are really into eating seasonally and fresh and local foods. So definitely something to check out when you're in Croatia. You can't go wrong with any of the food. Yeah, and then these are some of the meals at some of our planned dinners that we have. On the left, that's just a seasonal green salad. I think that was in Zagreb somewhere. And then also on the right is a pumpkin soup. During our tour is in October, and that's the time that they harvest pumpkins around Zagreb. So there's lots of, if any of you are into pumpkin spice lattes, or they don't quite have that, they haven't quite caught on to that yet, but they have a lot of good pumpkin soups and pumpkin flavored meals and stuff like that.
I remember when we were there last fall, Ashley was just like on a mission to try every pumpkin soup and find the best one. They
Exactly.
were all delicious.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so couple of fun facts. Nikola Tesla is technically from Croatia. Croatia, Serbia. His mom was Croatian. He was born in Croatia, but then later moved to Serbia and then the US. So he was monumental in helping develop so many things in energy. Also, the necktie was invented in Croatia. That happened when Croats served in the 30-year war in France, and apparently they tied the French flag around their neck, and they thought it looked really fashionable, and the king suggested it become a trend. So Croatia invented that, cravata. Croatia travel tips. So we usually recommend traveling in the spring and fall. Those are the shoulder seasons, and our tour runs in October. And in terms of clothing, since you're kind of experiencing two different climates, you have the temperate climate around Zagreb and Plitvice Lakes. You kind of have the more brisk 50 to 60 degree weather. And then as you get along the coast, I mean, it's definitely warm enough to swim. So it is nice that you get the best of both worlds, but it's also good to bring a rain jacket and, warmer layers. Croatian kuna is the currency that they use there, although Croatia is in the EU. They have not adopted the euro yet. Usually cash is better than credit card, but most places that you go, if you're eating out, will take credit. But you can really, I always recommend just going to an ATM and taking out Croatian kuna. It's probably the best bet. And ethical travel in Croatia. Usually we recommend that people take the time to learn about the history and learn about the background of Yugoslavia. And I know Traverse recommends this on most of their trips, but usually getting permission if you're going to take, a portrait photo of a stranger, those type of things, kind of developing more of a relationship. But people in Croatia are very warm and friendly and do love having guests and things like that. So.
Yeah, very welcoming, definitely. Did you touch on with the spring and the fall seasons as well? And I know all this might look a little different after COVID, but just in terms of the like busyness, I guess, of the, sites and places.
Yeah, so that was one of the factors, when we decided when to do this tour. And also personally, when friends, family ask me, I want to come, when should I go? I always suggest the shoulder seasons for the, usually it's not as crowded. Croatia, now it will look different after COVID, but has a huge over-tourism problem in the summer months. And it's just, if you look at some of the pictures of these cruise ships coming in, it's kind of unbearable. Now it will look different, but also weather-wise, I personally love like September, October. even a little bit more than the spring, just because it's a little bit easier to swim. The water has warmed up. So yeah, I still stand by spring and fall even after COVID stuff. Other Croatia highlights, yeah, so as I mentioned, Pelješac, that peninsula, Ston is kind of the first town in there, but if anyone was interested in doing kind of a Croatia road trip, you're into more like slow travel, I definitely recommend checking out Pelješac. There's tons of different hikes in Pelješac and also just throughout Croatia. There's so many different regions, and then also we don't get to this on our itinerary, but Croatia has like thousands of islands. There's probably 10 or so that are more popular to travel to, but there's a lot of great places that you can go, whether you want kind of a more party-ish scene on Hvar or just want to be like totally away from everyone on Mjet, so you can kind of get anything on the islands as well. Okay, looks like we have a question down here. In Dubrovnik, is it possible to visit the location where some scenes were filmed in the Game of Thrones series? Yeah, so there's tons of different Game of Thrones tours in Dubrovnik and Split and other places in Croatia as well. They basically have historical tours and filming tours, and then I think what's coolest is when they integrate the both of them to give you historical and film context. So yeah, and then we just wanted to highlight some of our past clients that came along. We sometimes get some really awesome and talented photographers that come along, and it's great because then you get souvenirs as some great photos from your trip as well. And yeah, we've had a really, really great group of people in the past couple of years come on our trips. Yeah, that was from our trip last year, and we all became really good friends. And
yeah, excellent. Great. So we've got some good questions coming in. We're going to kind of open it up now to anything that we didn't go over. And I'm just going to mention that if I disappear, my battery might be dying, but hopefully not. So the question about the cost of the trip and what it includes. So all of our trips include all of your accommodations, all your in-country transportation, you know, all your breakfasts and a portion of lunches and dinners as well. Usually, you know, a couple hours of included activity each day, whether it's a guided tour or, you know, going to visit a certain site or destination, like Plitvice or, you know, things like that. And we always try to incorporate a little bit of free time as well into each day so that people can kind of, you know, choose their own adventure and create their experience how they want it. And obviously your guides are included. And yeah, I think, you know, cost-wise, we'll get into that in a little bit. We do have some discounts, so that is good. And yes, for single travelers, we do by default pair individual signups with another guest of the same gender so that you're sharing a room, which helps with the cost, of course. So if you're a solo traveler, you don't have to pay a single supplement. Of course, you can if you want, if you choose to, if you prefer to have your own room, we can, of course, put you in your own room as well for a little supplemental fee. Let's see.
We have, what's the dress code in Croatia?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in terms of, I mean, you can really wear whatever is comfortable to you. I will say that, I mean, as you've probably, if you've traveled to other places in Europe, they're not big on like jean shorts or like huge logos or whatever, but that's more to just blend in with the local culture. But I mean, as you can see with our group here, I was wearing a dress with a leather jacket and tennis shoes. You can really just kind of wear whatever you want. And then I see Marco asks for religious backgrounds, which I actually didn't touch on. Croatia is, I believe, 95% Catholic. A lot of people are practicing more culturally than they are like very strict Catholic, but that's very ingrained in their identity, and it had also a lot to do with breakup of Yugoslavia and them wanting religious freedom. And so.
Okay, yeah, excellent. Any other questions? Anything else that anybody's curious to ask about? Anything at all related to Croatia or traveling in Croatia or different destinations or experiences? Feel free to pipe up. We're here to help. Has anyone been to that part of the world, to the Mediterranean, or even maybe to Croatia before, or looking to go sometime in 2020 or 2021? I'm curious. So our trip is in October. I think October 18th, I believe. Does that sound right, Alex?
Yep.
Is when it starts. So yeah, October 18th to the 25th or so, with the add-on, optional add-on after that. And you already touched, Alex, on Croatia opening up for international visitors at the beginning of the event.
Yeah, well, we're going to know officially more next week, because that's when the EU is making an official announcement for external borders. But we're still hopeful for the fall, because Croatia has done so well in mitigating this situation. And even now there's lots of headlines that, you know, things are closing or whatever, but currently they are still allowing Americans to come with a hotel reservation. And I'm anticipating by the fall that things will be pretty opened up. But if not, as Laura said, the 2021 is still there, and things are always transferable with that. So.
Excellent. Yeah. And, you know, we're just going to kind of leave you with some positive thoughts, of course. All that are eager and anxious to get out there in the world again, you know, just to remember that the world isn't going anywhere, and, you know, as soon as it's possible and viable, we'll be taking people, and, you know, the countries around the world will be, you know, they're trying as hard as possible to open up as soon as possible.
Absolutely. There's a couple of questions here. We have one: is it considered a developing or developed country? Croatia is considered a developing democracy. So, I mean, it is part of the EU. It's completely safe. I have found I'm way more safer, or feel way more safer in Croatia than I ever have lived in the US. I also would say, though, that it's just, you know, it is 30 years old as a country. So politically, there are some things they're still working through, but as a tourist, it's absolutely safe. In fact, it's probably one of the safest countries within Europe, or actually the whole world, not just Europe. Yeah, and Hrvatska is a NATO member. That is true as well. So I already touched on this, the current ban on travel for Americans to the EU. So we're going to get more information on that next week. It looks like Laura's computer died, so I'll just end this here. There'll be more information on that, but also 2021 is still going to be open. And like I said, I actually am a bit hopeful that I know some people here are in the UK or elsewhere in Europe. Croatia will definitely be open, I'd say this summer. It will likely take longer for the US, but the fall is still a possibility. So do we have any more questions here? So you can go to traversejourneys.com and I believe /Croatia, and you can read all about the itinerary, the cost, the breakdown for single travelers, double travelers, and currently they're offering a discount on this Croatia tour. So you can find out more about that on traversejourneys.com. And I believe the discount is $200, but Laura's computer died and was just about to talk about that. So any other questions here? So great to meet all of you virtually, and I hope you guys consider coming to Croatia either with us or just on your own. like I said, my name is Alex. I'm the tour group leader. Thank you, Linda. I've been to Croatia several times and highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite European countries, amazing people, food, things to see, and not as expensive as European countries. Yes, exactly. And that's one thing that I've loved about living in Croatia, and always hear from guests that come travel as well. Yeah, so if you guys want to learn more, head to Traverse Journeys. My blog is called The Mindful Mermaid, mindfulmermaid.com. I have some guides and stuff on there if you're interested in learning more. And yeah, if any of you have more questions, feel free to reach out to either one of us. So thank you all so much. Thank you guys. Have a good Saturday.